Manbij, Syria. The large section of northeastern Syria once occupied by the Islamic State is now a rare safe area in the war-ravaged country, thanks to an American-backed coalition known as the Syrian Democratic Forces. The coalition's fighters, who with American help drove the Islamic State from the region, are Arabs and Kurds, men and women, young and old. Many are veterans of multiple battles and have been wounded, but return to the fight again and again. Here are a few of them. The joke about Mr. Muhammad, an Arab who is married with 7 children between 6 months and 15 years old, is that every time he gets wounded, he goes home to recuperate and fathers another child. He is one of the 4 deputies to the American-backed Manbij Military Council's top commander, who is a Kurd. Mr. Muhammad said he has fought alongside the Americans throughout northern Syria, on at least 13 battlefields. Before we used to just fight, and now since the Americans joined us we're in the era of organizing ourselves, he said. In the beginning they were just like advisors and didn't go with us to the front line, but later they joined us there, too, he said, referring to American forces. 4 of the 5 times he was wounded, he was evacuated by American medics. Orhan Kamislo was a Kurdish fighter for the People's Protection Forces, who helped the Americans defeat the Islamic State, also known as ISIS and Daesh, in Manbij, which is both a city and a district in this region of Syria. He was killed in battle in July 2016 at age 21. His father, Mr. Ebed, was also a Kurdish militiaman, stationed elsewhere. When the family heard that Orhan had died, his brother, Abdul Razak, now 19, joined in his place and took his brother's name, a common practice among Kurds. When he took his name, it was like my son the martyr had never died, Mr. Ebed said. He and the new Orhan were visiting the older Orhan's grave, festooned with his picture, to plant an olive tree in front of it. Mr. Derwish, a Kurd, is married and has 5 children, 1 to 13 years old, who live far from him so they can attend Kurdish schools. A week ago I went to see my kids and I had to ask, what grade are you in school now, he said. He began working as a civilian for the revolution in Kobani, Syria, and was one of the first founders and organizers of the Syrian Democratic Forces. I may be the media spokesman, but many times I've had to put down my camera and pick up my gun, he said. He said he felt that the public outside northern Syria was not very aware of what the Americans and the SDF had accomplished here. We're very proud. We did something for our people, and for the world. 2 years ago, ISIS was feared by the whole world. We gave to our people and to the world something very good. We did it with the Americans. Mr. Giro worked in a car wash in his hometown, Raqqa, until it was taken over by the Islamic State and his family fled to Turkey. He returned to Syria last year and joined the SDF. This month, he was wounded by a roadside bomb, and is now in the Tal Abyad military hospital recuperating from multiple injuries. The Islamic State, he said, was every bad thing in the world. Mr. Mazerli, an Arab who has been fighting since 2012, had trouble remembering all the many places he fought along with American soldiers, but his boss counted 9, including Manbij, his hometown. Mr. Mazerli developed a skill for dismantling booby traps, which the Islamic State often left behind when they were defeated. He was grateful to the Americans for supplying GPS and night vision equipment, which gave the SDF an edge over the Islamic State, but he said, with all due respect, the local fighters were better than the American allies at urban warfare. We are the owners of this land and we know how to get in and get out, and in a street war, they always used to carry a lot of stuff with them, which we didn't, he said. In a city, you have to be flexible and move fast, and they can't. The commander of the Manbij Military Council, Mr. Adel, is married and has 7 children, ages 10 to 22. This revolution has made me dizzy, he said, by way of explanation. Before taking over the command duties last year, he fought in at least 13 battlefields alongside the Americans. In the early days of American cooperation, in 2014, our skills were so primitive we would send tracers in the sky to guide the bombers to the targets, he said. We didn't know about map coordinates and GPS and all that stuff, didn't even have internet and target maps like we have now. Before the revolution, I was a businessman. I never knew anything about military science. Ms. Anas is the Euphrates Valley commander of the Women's Protection Forces, a Kurdish militia that is part of the SDF. Like many of her fellow commanders, she has been wounded in battle, while fighting in Kobani in 2014. Our commanders all lead from the front, she said. Ms. Anas fought alongside the American military in Manbij, Shadid, and Al-Hal, and last year in Raqqa and Deir al-Zur. The American Special Operations units always had 1 or 2 American women, and they were quick to bond with their Kurdish counterparts, she said. Some of them were chagrined, she said, when they realized the Kurds were way ahead of them in battlefield equality. They had limited powers compared to us, she said. We can make decisions and everything without a man approving them, and they can't easily do that. So you could say we're more advanced than the American military, that way. During the Raqqa and Manbij fights, the women's militia could sometimes listen in on Islamic State radio conversations. It drove Daesh crazy to think women were fighting against them, she said. They used to say, let's get one of their heads. They never did. No Kurdish woman was captured alive by the extremists, she said. With Daesh, we always kept 1 bullet or 1 grenade for ourselves, and fought to the last breath. Mr. Ahmed, a Kurd, and a brigade commander for the Syrian Democratic Forces, has been fighting alongside the Americans since 2014. He was wounded 4 times in 8 battles, from Kobani in the north to Deir al-Zur in the south. His unit was transferred from Deir al-Zur this month to protect Manbij against Turkish threats to the city. He liked fighting alongside the Americans. At first the Americans were always behind the lines, we never saw them, he said. Then, after Kobani, they were on the front lines with us. We were happy to see them there and they were happy, too. We used to sleep in the same places, eat the same food. Mr. Kobani, a Kurd, is one of 4 senior deputies to the top SDF commander, who is an Arab. And though his duties are administrative, he has been wounded 4 times in the field. On one occasion, American medics evacuated him by helicopter to Iraq for surgery to save an eye. Haki Kobani is a nom de guerre, which all fighters in the People's Protection Forces have, but he has been fighting so long that he never uses his real name any longer. No one would know who I am, he said. He first fought alongside the Americans in Kobani, after which he is named. He sees that battle as a turning point of the war, not just because of the widespread international support the Kurds and the SDF won after their victory at huge cost, with about 1,300 dead, but because it convinced the Americans that they were reliable partners. It was us and the coalition against the terrorists, and it was very good for us, he said. The whole world saw it was not just our battle, not just our war.